it. Tina, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair. My apologies, everyone. 안녕하세요. Good morning, greetings from Hong Kong. So my name is Tina Gao Fang. I'm from the Education University of Hong Kong. Prior to the start of my presentation, I'd like to thank Professor Song for providing me with this opportunity to speak at the conference. Okay. The title of my presentation is Teacher Identity and Educational Vision in Minority University Access, Paradox of Confucianism's Integration. Okay, so into this presentation, basically I'm going to talk about three things. Number one, ethnic minorities in Hong Kong. Okay, number two, their minority access to post-secondary education in Hong Kong. And number three, teacher identity in relation to university-bound minority students under the ideological context of Confucianism, which largely influences how frontline practitioners construct their professional identities. Okay, so I just wondering, what is your first impression of Hong Kong? I think, probably for most of you, Hong Kong is the Asia's world city. It's the city in which you can expose yourself fully to both the Western and Eastern cultures. That is 100% true. But when it comes to the demographics in the city, I think your first assumption is Hong Kong is composed of Chinese citizens, right? You are right. A majority of Hong Kong's population are ethnic Chinese. But there is a certain number of ethnic minority pupils in Hong Kong, okay? According to the latest population census conducted in 2021, 92% of Hong Kong's 7.41 million population were Chinese, 8% non-Chinese ethnicity. So non-Chinese refer to those who report not speaking Chinese, Cantonese as their primary language at home. Statistically, non-Chinese are subsumed into four categories, including other Chinese, Asian, white Caucasians, mixed, and others. Well, if we exclude foreign domestic helpers who stay on short-term housekeeping contracts in the city, and the non-Chinese stood at 4% of the overall population, predominantly hailing from neighboring South and Southeast countries, and constituting the fastest growing demographic in the territory and its pre-tertiary public schools. South and Southeast Asian ethnic minorities migrated into Hong Kong since the beginning of British colonization back to 1841. Okay, during the British colonial period, the dominating discourse in Hong Kong prescribed ethnic minorities as alien and transient. Okay, so that is, they had the social status of British subjects, worked and lived in Hong Kong to facilitate British colonial governance. Okay, so what about the dominating discourse in relation to ethnic minorities after the handover to China in 1997? Well, ethnic minorities started to be identified as non-Chinese speakers, okay? Well, local scholars consider NCS as a label that stigmatizes their perceived linguistic and academic deficits, locates the low academic performance in ethnic minorities, and positions them as others to an imagined homogeneous Chinese language community. Well, that has led the discursive institutionalism of outsiderness to university discourse in deficit terms. But in reality, that is true, because ethnic minorities have been constantly underrepresented in post-secondary education in Hong Kong across diploma, certificate, sub-degree, and bachelor levels. For instance, in 2006, 36.1% of aged 18 to 24 minority youth attended post-secondary education, compared with 44.7% for the whole population, while the gap had climbed from 80.6% to 9.3% in 10 years. And such ethnicity-based gap is even more pronounced for the poor and low-income East Asians, who actually constitute the majority of minority population in the city. In 2016, for instance, only 12.5% Indonesians, 13.3% Thais, 15% Nepalese, and 20.5% Pakistanis aged 15 years and over had obtained a university or college qualification when compared with 32.7% of the whole population. We know today the benefits of post-secondary education and beyond documents both the high payoff to individuals and societies. For instance, the Roscoe's noted that the global economy is largely unforgiving to those who do not achieve post-secondary education and beyond. And in Hong Kong, those minorities without a university degree are locked into the low socioeconomic strata and have remained persistently overrepresented in poverty. So it is in the territory's social and economic interest to widen post-secondary education access for this population. Well, the current debates in Hong Kong on university access inequality centered on various intersecting challenges faced by minority students during the university choice process. So those challenges include, but not limited to, university college course restrictions and post-secondary education admissions policies and inadequate secondary education preparation. Meanwhile, the role of secondary school teachers in minority access to post-secondary education remains under-theorized and less explored. So this study drew on a critical post-structuralist perspective of teacher identity and addressed the core research question: how do secondary school teachers perceive and enact their professional identities towards the university planning, search, and choice and minority students in Hong Kong? So why teacher identity? So why I used the teacher identity as a theoretical framework? Because over the last 2 decades, teacher identity as a conceptual tool has gained increasing momentum in research on teaching and the teacher education. Okay, such as Sarkis argued the nature of teaching and learning is a process in which teachers construct their own ideas of how to be, how to act, and how to understand their work and their place in society. Okay. So especially racial and ethnic minority students often disproportionately reside in segregated environments, which family members and peers who have also had limited experience of higher education in the receiving society. So institutional agents and subsequent information and support offered will profit those university-bound minorities. Well, talking about teacher identity from a critical post-structuralist approach, okay, the teacher identity is characterized as multiple, complex, fluid, and transformative. On the other hand, the teacher identity has been constructed within the interplay of structure and agency. So that is, the normative demands of the external forces encounter the internal meaning-making and the desires of the teacher, so in the shaping of teacher identity. So in this study, we not only accounted for the external conditions, okay, mediating how teachers shape their professional identities, but also investigated the teachers' agentic meaning-making of themselves and their responsibilities for university transitioning minority students. Fieldwork case study has been conducted in the local Chinese media secondary school. This is so-called mainstream school, with one of the purpose of integrating minority students into the mainstream education system. Okay, so Chinese Cantonese has been used as a media of instruction in that school. So we elicited the voices of 18 teachers aged between 25 and 44 years, including 8 males and 10 females. Most of them were very experienced in teaching minority students, and they taught Chinese as a second language to minority students. So they are, in that sense, language teachers, okay, right. Semi-structured individual interviews have been conducted with all the 18 participants. What we found from our case study, actually 3 themes of teacher roles and responsibilities in relation to university-bound minority students were found and presented here, okay. While the participants in the University for All school climate, okay, so they identify themselves as inspirational, pastoral mentor, and anti-racist. So they manage the inspirational role in linking to the moments when teachers shared personal university experiences in classrooms. Like participant 1 described how he used his own campus life as a soft measure to arouse minority students' interest in university. Okay, so he said, because they are interested in listening to the personal stories of their teachers, they will often pay extra attention to the personal stories and raise a lot of questions. Okay, so the story sharing could help them to find the missing piece of the puzzle for their future development. Well, the Confucian value of no distinction in education play a huge part in the construction of this role and the teacher's responsibility, because it shaped their professional identity in the way that confronted the deficit discourse on minority students. Okay, so let's pay attention to the script from participant 8 interview. So he said they have already lacked motivation due to the deficit labeling. The deficit label definitely hurts them by saying that, oh, you cannot get into university. So what the teacher always said to his minority students is like, I will just say, it is better if you could study harder, you're almost there, or another minority student is the same as you at first, but in the end, he or she could succeed. So why not? It must be possible for you too, okay? So you see, the teachers actually demonstrated a level of agency in legitimizing minority university access in Hong Kong. And the collective commitment to predisposing minority students to university interlinked with their agentic action, providing pastoral care for minority students, is that there will be mutual encouragement between teachers and students and among classmates. And the second theme we found out is participants' professional identities were further developed with their commitments and practices to help minority students search and select university. Okay, so we know the 3 stages of college access process, right? So now it's past the predisposition stage, aspiration development, move on to the university applications, the information sharing. So the participants show themselves as key informational channels through which minority students could plan further studies and future paths. Like participant 13 explicated, you think they know, okay, so you think minority students and minority parents know, okay, the information of local universities and colleges, but they may not know. So I will explain and give them more information, okay? So this was a recognition of the structural discourse disadvantage characterized most ethnic minority families and additional resources that would be needed to address it. Well, apart from being sources of information, participants acted as a bridge between minority students and other significant agents for valuable resources. Okay, so here we go from participant 17. Students would want to know more, and provided that we invite minority students to share. Okay, so over the past few years in that particular school, they got minority graduates, who successfully enter local universities. Okay, so the minority alumni were invited back to the school to give a talk on university access, and the minority students, felt very excited. Okay, they would really pay extra attention to. In addition to that, we also actually, participant 4 shared a very interesting story. He said, he even helped one of his minority students to obtain a reference letter from a professor at the university where the students desire to study further. Okay. Well, though the non-discriminatory university-going norms and appropriate accommodations, such as school programs, information provision, and guidance, on university application, we found out that the teacher participants, consistently conform to the view of impartiality and treating all students the same. Okay, so Confucius believed that social justice is expressed through the idea of impartiality, meaning that political rule should promote the good of everyone without prejudice or favoritism. So it would be a violation of fairness or justice if the ruler was selectively concerned about some people only. For instance, according to participant 18, okay, she said, well, as the minority students think they are an ethnic minority, so you have to help them, and so on. I do not want students to think in that way. Okay, so you are as the minority, you must be disadvantaged, so you should wait for others to help to save you. Okay, right. And this emphasis on the development of one's capacities through one's own efforts recurred in the narratives of participants. As minorities were always blamed for not being able to utilize the resources and the school-based resources available to them. Like participant 2, as I said, this is a mainstream school. So when he talked about his understanding or definition of integrating minority students into the mainstream society, okay, and he said, we have to do a lot for them, okay. So we here means teachers and society, and we have to plan everything for them. On the contrary, they feel that there are too many resources, okay, that are too easy to get and will not cherish them, right? So to give you a quick conclusion, okay, so we think the 3 themes unpacked the multiple and in conflict identities embedded in the roles and the responsibilities of ethnic Chinese teachers, okay? They displayed the kinds of professional actions the teachers took within the context that mediated their self-concepts and actions. Okay. That is in line with the critical post-structuralist perspective of teacher identity we utilize deployed in this study. And we also find the findings actually unrivaled unpacked how impartiality or non-favoritism of Confucian justice shaped the way teachers understood their professional roles. So in that sense, we caution that under the belief of impartiality, teachers may accept or acknowledge a spectrum of hurdles or challenges faced by ethnic minorities, but such acceptance or acknowledgement is not necessarily converted into a responsibility to engage in ongoing proactive actions. I think that is probably one way back to the topic we are all interested in concerning multicultural education in an Asian context like Hong Kong. So when we talk about Hong Kong, it is a multicultural city, but in Hong Kong, we do not have so-called multicultural education policy, okay? That is partly led by the Confucianism's understanding of integration. So all the measures, all the strategies, now you can find out in the context of Hong Kong are treated as transitional remedials, okay, in order to improve the Chinese language competency of minority students and making sure minority students one day will be able to join the society on their own efforts, okay? Right, so I think I'm not sure how long I have used, okay. Chair, it's okay, I'm still within the time frame, right, the time limit.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Right, okay, I think I'm going to stop here, okay, so it's just my apologies again, you know, for all the trouble caused, okay. So I'll be happy to share with you more if you have any questions, comments on my presentation and on this study, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tina. So are there any questions from the floor then? I mean, I have maybe more of a comment than a question, that I thought it was quite surprising that the different sort of census categories in Hong Kong, you know, Asian, white, and mixed, are they've kind of been the same sort of since the 1870s, you know, like, and I think that was I think a very, very strong sort of demonstration of your point of the sort of effects of these categorizations.